Thank you. My name is David Essex. I joined the band in March 1969. My first position in the band was on second horn, and then 2 years later I moved on to solo horn, and 2 years after that I moved on to the first horn position, and I was in the band from 1969 until 1989, 20 years in total, and I played every horn position in Dyke. Music was very important right from the start. I began playing at the age of 5. Music at school, music at I always remember Sunday school anniversaries, and we used to make up little quartets and quintets. And then at the age of 13, I joined the National Youth Brass Band of Great Britain and stayed until 19 under the direction of Dr. Dennis Wright, and later under Geoffrey Brand. Well, when you're in the National Youth Brass Band, you get lots of visits, and one of the horn tutors at the year in Huddersfield was James Shepherd. And James took a few players up to the rehearsal to listen Dyke, and it was through him really that, I first heard all about the Dyke Mills Band. Well, one of the highlights is that I've always wanted to make history and be in the history books. And within the brass band contest scene, the history has always been that if a band has done the hat trick, i.e. 3 consecutive wins, they were barred the following year. And history always said that the 5th time that they went back, the band would win again. Well, we did this, so we've only equaled history at the moment, but the following year we won again, and so now we're on for a double hat trick, and that has never been done. And I wanted to write the history books and be part of that history. And the 3rd year, we came second, so close to actually doing a history-making venture, and we were beaten into second place by Brighouse and Rastwick, and no other person but Geoffrey Brand conducting them. So I lost out on my one history-making venture. I do remember being on solo horn on Kensington Concerto, and Mr. Brand had decided that he would seat the band in slightly different position and put the solo horn where normally the solo euphonium would sit. And Kensington Concerto started off with the melody by the principal cornet player, then Mr. Jim Shepherd, starting the whole test piece, and the solo horn had to finish a little refrain with the same theme. And I do remember at the very beginning looking at Jim, and something happened at the very beginning that either Jim didn't start on time or Mr. Brand wasn't ready. But I do remember Jim just starting by himself, and he played it so beautiful. And I can remember all through the test piece, boy, don't mess it up. You've got to do that now at the very end. And if I'd have messed it up, I'd have spoiled it for the whole of the band. So I could feel the tension building all the time until we got to the end of the test piece. Fortunately, I played very well, and I did get a mention in the adjudicator's remarks about the sweet sound of the tenor horn, solo horn. One of the highlights was the first time that we went abroad. I'd only just joined the band in 1969, and we were invited by the council of Bradford City to go to Roubaix, which is the town twinning of Bradford. And we were doing this trip with the Bradford City football players. And so it was Dyke Mills Band and Bradford City football players. It was one of the first ventures that the band had done abroad. And to be quite honest, we were all very naive. And then the resident conductor, then Mr. Roy Newsom, he explained to us that we left on a Friday at tea time, and he explained that when we left from Leeds Bradford, we would be flying into London. And at London, we would be able to have a light snack and then get on the plane for Roubaix. Now, when we did board the plane at Leeds Bradford, half the band sat at the front Bradford City players were in the middle and half the band were at the back. So when we got off in London, we sort of lost the front half of the band. Anyway, we knew that we'd got time, so we sat down and had our meal. And I do remember Fred Ellis, one of my friends, was with us, and Kevin Wadsworth. And we said, do you not think it's time that, you know, the flight should be called? So we said, we'll make inquiries. Well, we made inquiries at the information desk only to be told that we were in the wrong terminal. And we never knew that there were different terminals at that stage. So we had to run to a different terminal and we missed the plane. And so we actually got to the plane as it was being taxi pushed back, and we were waving to the rest of the band, and we were waving from the windows. And what happened then, that the organisers had to do a very, very quick change, and within an hour they flew us to Paris, and we had to catch the train from Paris down to Roubaix and travel all through the night. And it was one of these postal freight trains, and it was very uncomfortable. It wasn't a comfortable train, and it stopped at every station from Paris to Roubaix, and we'd had nothing to eat. Every station that we went to, all the cafeterias were closed. We'd had no tea, no sandwiches, and we were exhausted. And then when we did arrive, Roy Newsom came in the morning, and he was fuming with us, you know, what happened and all. He was asking what had happened. And there was 8 of us that missed the plane. And we are convinced to this day that if James Shepherd had not been one of those 8, we would have all been sacked. But they couldn't sack Jim because he was the principal cornet player, and he was one of the person that missed the plane as well. So we were very fortunate. But we only missed, on the Friday night, we only missed a reception. We were there to play for all the concerts on the Saturday, but we were very, very tired. I think John Slinger must stand out because John was, I always called him the wise owl. He was a very, very wise person and a brilliant player. And so, you know, I do remember John, and also Peter Wells. Peter Wells worked for the electricity board, and he had the nickname of Flash. And so, you know, Peter was a big influence. It was always a joy to work with Kevin and the rest of the horn section, the people of them. But and then at later times, I do remember Peter Christian on baritone. He was another character who was very funny, and you know, they're the main ones really. Well, of course, Geoffrey Brand was the first for me, and I'd had an association with him through the National Youth Brass Band. And when he did do the courses at the National Youth Band, I do remember he was a workaholic. He worked us all very, very hard. And so when I came here, it was a joy to see him in front of the band. And it was amazing really, because Mr. Brand was the professional conductor, but Roy Newsom was the resident conductor. Now, what that actually meant, that Roy did most of the rehearsals, and then Mr. Brand would just come along and do special ones or the contest pieces. And I always thought to myself that Roy, within this band room, was a very, very brilliant notation person. He could get all the notes together. He could get all the pianos, all the fortes, all the crescendos together. And it was like baking a cake. The cake was there, but then it needed the icing and all the dressing on top. And when Geoffrey Brand came, he put the icing on the cake. And it was just a wonderful association, because all the work had been done by Roy, and Geoffrey would just come along and just make music of the notation of the notes. Roy had done all the work with the notes of the notation, crescendos and everything, that all in the right place. But Geoffrey came along and just made music of the piece. And I can remember, you know, Journey into Freedom, because I listened to that. I was in the audience for that. But Kensington Concerto and all that, I thought it was very, very musical. And then, of course, after that, Major Parks came along. And Major Parks was a joy. Because we worked in the daytime, rehearsals were in the evening, you'd be probably tired, and Major Parks would march through the door. And if you can see from the photograph, he'd roll his sleeves up. and he'd be ready then to start. And it would just, if you were tired after a day's work, he'd just refresh you with music. And Major Parks, I feel, could do both. Major Parks could do the notation, and then once all the notation was in place, then he could make music of it. So he could do the two things, you know, where it seemed to be Roy and Jeffrey Brand combined, but Major Parks had the talent that he could do both. And it was just a joy, just a simple joy to work with. And I can remember, you know, being first horn player, sitting in the middle of the band, you look direct at the musical director, and you just, many times our eyes would just catch each other and we'd just know. And he just produced magic, absolute magic, magical performances. After Major Parks, when he left, I was still here, and the next conductor that influenced me was an Australian called David King. David King was a very young and dynamic conductor, and I thought he was really impressive. And you know, we were slightly unlucky with him because we played absolutely superb down in London on Odin, and I could remember on the Saturday morning in rehearsal, he wanted something special from Odin, the middle movement. And it was in argument basically with Peter Christian, and Peter Christian kept saying, I'm not quite sure what you mean, I'm not quite sure what you mean. Anyway, we worked on it, and we worked on that little section for 20 minutes. And when we played it on the Royal Albert Hall, my wife said that she actually saw icicles pinging, and that's exactly what David King. And even while I'm talking about him now, I'm feeling this shiver down my body, because I do remember he really wanted that atmosphere, and it was absolutely amazing. But unfortunately, we only came second. An overseas tour to Canada. This was organised by Jeffrey Brand and his associates. It involved Dyke, GUS and Fairies. And at that time also, my cousin was on solo horn at Fairies. We were able to take our wives, which was a joy, but they wanted 2 planes, 1 plane for players of the bands, and the second plane was for wives. And I'd not long got married, so it was a joy. She thought it was absolutely wonderful going to Niagara Falls. We played concerts in the Skylon, which is still there. It's a great big tower, and it was the main concert hall at the bottom. Our conductors were magical. We had Eric Ball. We had, of course, Harry Mortimer and Jeffrey Brand, and the concert was just absolutely fabulous. I do remember when we were walking outside, they had Tenor systems, and they had a car going round the whole of Niagara Falls. We've got the 3 greatest bands from England, you know, come and hear them, and the concerts were just totally sellouts. You can see it on YouTube. The great players when I first came obviously were Jim Shepherd. One of the joys when we did our records was accompanying Jim on his solos. Pandora, Napoli, Carnival of Venice. I mean, when Jim played them, the performances were definitive. They just could not be beaten. And to accompany those in the band, it was just an absolute joy. So Jim, you know, he was the first player that was absolutely amazed me. And then after that, Roy Newsom, he took me to a concert featuring Maurice Murphy, and it was in York Minster. And then one of the problems was, after that, I heard the magic tones of Maurice Murphy, and I thought, yes, he's very good, but I only heard him in a concert. Anyway, I do remember one particular year that Harry Mortimer wanted to fulfill one of his lifelong ambitions, which was to do The Messiah and record it for the BBC before he popped his clogs, so to speak. Anyway, it was all arranged. We went to Huddersfield Town Hall, and it was Black Dyke and Foden's with the Huddersfield Choral Society. And I remember it was spread over a weekend, so the Saturday and Sunday, and the first time we did the recording on Saturday, the first aria that we did, the singer didn't like playing. We did mass bands, Foden's and Black Dyke together, and the singer just said, I'm sorry, we can't do this. It's far too loud. The accompaniments are far too loud, and it was a big problem. And so Harry Mortimer then had to say, I'm sorry, we'll have to do a band at a time. We can't do mass bands. And so Black Dyke had to sit on the balcony while Foden's played, and then Foden's likewise on the balcony while Black Dyke played. But we're still having problems all through the day. And the recording session was not going well at all. And everybody was getting extremely frustrated with the BBC saying, no, this isn't right, edit this, edit that. And it became very, very bitty. And I do remember we did the trumpet show sound. And who was the trumpet but Maurice Murphy? And Maurice stood at the back on the risers, and it was a one take. It was absolutely fantastic. And nobody, you know, to hear Maurice, effortless, yeah, absolutely just changed. It changed the whole atmosphere of the recording. And after that, every track went on and on and on. But it was Maurice, and I would definitely say this, Maurice changed the atmosphere, because we were definitely having problems with that recording. And everybody was getting frustrated until Maurice played his solo. Absolutely. And then that's when I realised that he really did impress me. Yeah. And then, of course, the next person was Philip McCann. Philip, he did a record, a recording of the world's most beautiful melodies, and it was in St Anne's Cathedral in Leeds. And the acoustics and Philip's sweet sound was just a joy to be with. So really, it's three cornet players: Maurice, Jim, and Philip. I think one of the biggest difficulties was when Jim decided to form Versatile Brass, because that left quite a few vacancies at the band. And those days we only had one change maybe within 2 or 3 years. But unfortunately, Jim wanted to, he had this burning ambition to form his own group, and he took quite a chunk of the players. So that was a difficult time. But we overcame it, you know, like everything else. As I point that down, there's no irreplaceable man. That's the poem that kept me going. And for the rest of the band, we all took that attitude, got the new players in. Philip McCann came, settled in. But Philip played, he wasn't the workhorse, I should say, that James Shepherd was. And we got a person on Bumper Up called Ken MacDonald. He was the principal cornet player of Grimethorpe, and Ken came, and Ken was the workhorse for the tutties, and Philip did all the solos, and then it worked absolutely wonderful. We had one of the finest cornet sections, you know, and settled team, and it was wonderful to listen to that cornet section. Oh, playing in the band changed my life a lot, because the band were invited over to Northern Ireland to do 2 concerts, and on the Friday night we were in the Usher Hall in Belfast, and the organisers invited 2 ladies choirs and 2 male voice choirs to make one massed choir to play behind the band. And after that concert we were all invited back to a reception, and I saw this girl in the choir, and we got talking, and I danced together. And then I said to her, "You coming to the Saturday night concert?" And she said, "Not sure, don't know yet." And she sat on the front row, and I was looking out in the audience all the time, and she sat right on the front row on the Saturday night, and that lady became my wife. We've just done a celebration concert for the life of Major Parks, and one thing that I always remember, I have no idea how this developed, but we'd always somehow, for the results, we'd always be together, you know, we'd always be side by side listening to the results. And then when we won, we'd give each other a big hug, and it sort of became a ritual that every time the results were given out, we must find each other, both in the Free Trade Hall, well, to start off with, in the Bellevue, you know, under where the circus comes out. We'd always be standing together waiting for the result, and then also at the bottom of the steps at the Royal Albert Hall, just in front of the stage. So we'd always be together, you see, for the results. And it was like an omen, we must be together. But I do remember this one occasion, and it was at Bellevue. And just before the results came out, I said to Major Parks, I said, "Do you know, Major, the law of averages, we can't win every time." And he said, "Don't talk so stupid, boy." And he really gave me a right stare as though to say, of course we can. And I never forget that, because I just said, the law of averages, Major, we can't. Don't talk so stupid, boy, of course we can. That, one of the highlights of the Major. Oh, immense. Absolutely immense. I mean, the band is just world renowned. Everybody in the world knows Black Dyke. And the present band at the moment are doing a wonderful job of promoting the band with this heritage to start off with. The band room becoming a museum. No, absolutely wonderful. I would like to say that I think the band now are far, far more professional than nowadays. Not in particular about Black Dyke, but I am concerned about the music that's being churned out at the moment, especially for contests. It's not rocket science that you can give a challenging piece, composers can write a challenging piece, but it still be pleasant for the audience to listen to, and that you can come away singing or humming a melody from that piece. I just think that some of the test pieces today, they're just so weird, and that people are just voting with their feet and not attending them. They're waiting to see what the piece is like. I think Peter Graham writes such wonderful music, and I think when Black Dyke play tuneful music, it's just wonderful. But I am concerned about composers today writing the correct type of music to please everybody, please the players, please the adjudicators, please the audience, instead of just pleasing themselves. I wanted to go into brass teaching, so I've been teaching now for 20 years, and my advice to children is to practice, and only do it if you want to do it. Many times mum and dad want you to play, but if you don't want to do it, don't do it. But if you want to do it, then practice, please practice, because you need the muscles, you need the development, and then you need the commitment. Have somewhere to aim for as well, and also to listen to a lot of music, listen to soloists, listen to brass bands. Many times I say to pupils, do you listen to any brass band? No. Do you listen to any music? No. I do feel that youngsters need to probably listen and find heroes in the brass band. And most of my good pupils like to go to all the brass band concerts in Morley Town Hall. They like to come here and listen to Black Dyke. One of my grade 8 pupils, as a treat, I brought him here, and he had his photograph taken with Nick, and he just thought it was great. And he's going on and developing, but now there'll probably be a little lull while he's at university, and so I just hope that he keeps practicing. But nowadays there's quite a lot of pressure on youngsters, to do well both at football and sport, and academically as well, and they've got to commit themselves if they want to play a brass instrument and practice. Only that I think that this is an absolutely great idea. The heritage, like I say, I've always wanted to be a part of history. I was very fortunate to be involved in the film Brassed Off, and so I'm there on the silver screen forever, and I like that, and I'm very honoured to be part of this heritage and this interview, and very honoured indeed. Thank you very much.